Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm not going to show you any nice pictures or my face or anything like that. I've just got the phone sitting on the counter here, and I'm just going to talk like I would be if I was talking in front of a group of people on a stage or platform or whatever the case may be, a public speaking type thing. Just speak from my heart and just talk uh, in that manner. I'm gonna try this because I really don't want to do a drive and talk. I really don't want to do a walk and talk. I just want to share some things that I've been thinking about and I've been inspired by, and I'm just gonna share it with you all. So this is one of those things where people could be in your car listening. You could be cleaning the house. You could be washing, maybe not washing your car. That might be a little too loud, but I don't know. You could just have it on in the background or whatever else. Just one of those things. That's just what I'm going to do today. Just something a little different. Um, kind of shake it up a little bit. I mean, different as far as not doing the walk and talk, not doing the drive and talk. Just speaking like if I was, like I said, on a stage or whatever, public speaking engagement or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to try this. So, anyway, I've been thinking about a few things. Part of this is inspired by the teaching that Pastor Hank, just put out on his platform, I guess, his YouTube channel, God's Soldiers Ministry, on annihilationism. Annihilationism. That's the word. Annihilationism. Which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought he did a great job. I just shared it. It's a great teaching. It was very, very good. Because I'm familiar with this concept. So part of it is inspired by that. Part of what I'm going to talk about. But then there is other things because of what I'm seeing in the headlines and the news and so forth. It does appear, as well as the video from Rosie Lost Sheep. If people are familiar with her, I shared it. I thought it was pretty interesting. So I'm going to hit on a lot of different things, man, because at the age I'm at now, I just turned 55 back in July. You do some reflecting, at least I do, on past years, experiences, even going back to your childhood, things that I want to pass on to my children, my adult children now, things that I want to share with people that are willing to listen, try to help them to understand a few things about their dad, and just, I don't know, just share some things I hadn't shared before, that I've led kind of a pretty interesting life. Not saying it's over by any means. I mean, I'm only 55, but looking back now, I've led kind of an interesting life. I mean, maybe not as interesting as others, but maybe more interesting than some. I don't know. But I've had the opportunity to have a lot of experiences. Things happen to me, my family, especially on an individual level. I've had some things happen to me I really wouldn't wish on anyone, to be honest with you. And I'm sure other people could probably relate to that. Interesting experiences. The way I was raised, the way I grew up. It's not what everybody would understand, and it's not what everybody would, they could have a good comprehension of. Let's just put it that way. Remember, I'm not reading from a script or anything like that. This is all coming from me right now, okay? So if I'm not as eloquent as or articulate as I should be, forgive me. But just trying to speak, from my heart here, okay? Most of you if you've listened to me for any length of time, you knew that I grew up in a military family from the age of 5. And during those times, I don't remember a lot except for when I really began to go to church. I mean, I remember, like, when we lived in Germany, that was the first place I lived. My dad joined the Army when I was 5, okay? Before that, he did a lot of different type of things. He was an elevator, he did elevator construction. He was what did he do? He was an EMT, an ambulance driver, I guess, at the time, kind of thing, you know, EMT. Because that really, emergency medical services really wasn't a major thing until like around 1973 or so, I think. So I was 5 in 75, so it was pretty new on the market. And so he did a lot of different things. He joined the Army when I was 5. And the first place we were at was his first MOS, his military occupation specialty, was military intelligence, right? Oxymoron there, right? But anyway, the first place we were at was Germany, Augsburg, Germany. And I was there from like around the time I was 5 to 8 years old, okay? And I don't remember a whole lot about it, except playing on a soccer team and had this friend. I remember names. I had this kid on a soccer team. His name was Matt Boyd. I remember that. My dad would coach the team with his dad. And I don't know if his dad was in the Army or not. Probably was. Not a lot of Americans in Augsburg, Germany at the time, unless you were in the military. So anyway, I remember that. But I remember going to school, learning a little bit of German, you know, going to elementary school. I kind of remember what it looked like a little bit, you know, on the outside. But anyway, when we got back stateside, though, that's when we really started going to church, because it was kind of required. Because for a time we lived in Florida, down in Miami, where my grandparents lived, and my grandparents were like hardened Baptist, hardened Southern Baptist. Okay, it was kind of like when the church doors were open, you were there. All right, you didn't have a choice. You went to church. It was just, especially as a young child, you know. And I remember going to church and being in Sunday school. And I guess when you're too young, there's junior church, because this would have been kind of what you would consider a mega church of today. But you got to remember, this was like in the early 70s, you know. I mean, it was called Miami Shores Baptist. I remember the name of it and everything. And I just remember church. Church is a big part of life. And, you know, Sunday school and Sunday school lessons. I had a friend at that time, I guess his name was Scott Ingalls or whatever. And I just remember these names, you know, impacts in your life and whatnot. So, church was a big part of life, but not really relationship. It was just church. I mean, you had a relationship, I guess you could say, like on Wednesday night before the service, they would actually serve everybody a meal. This was like, I guess, a Baptist thing. And I think we had what was called a Awana Club or something like that. And so I remember doing all of that. And, you know, at least when we were in Florida, waiting for my dad, my dad was in training for a new military occupation specialty or whatever. And I remember going to school there, right, 3rd grade or whatever. And then I remember us leaving, and then my dad getting orders to, first it was Texas for a very short time, but or was it Oklahoma? See, I can't, this is where it gets confusing. But anyway, either Texas or Oklahoma. I think it was Texas for a short time while my dad was getting his training in San Antonio. But I think he was there actually, and we stayed in Florida for the most part. And then he got orders to Oklahoma. That's what it was. And so we met up with him again in Oklahoma. And by that time, I was about 9, 10. Yeah, I was in 4th grade. I remember now. 4th grade. And that's when we started. We went to another Baptist church, and I really liked this church in Oklahoma. It's called Lawton Baptist Tabernacle. And that's where I actually had a profession of faith when I was 10 years old. And I remember it, and I really liked it. And that was a time I had finished up going to an elementary school. And I had finished up, and it was interesting because when we had moved there, a tornado had just hit, and it tore the roof off the gym and everything. I was like 9 years old, and I remember that. And then my folks decided to send us to the Christian school that was run by the church, Lawton Baptist Tabernacle, Lawton, Oklahoma, in Fort Sill, and I really liked it. I really, because we had a great, not, I wasn't a youth group, it wasn't a youth group as of yet because I was too young for that, but we had a great guy. His name was John Black, who drove the bus, and he also taught the kids my age and so forth in the church, and we had a really good time at that school. I really liked it a lot. But being a military kid, I never allowed myself to attach to anything because it hurt too much when you would move. And so you're always in the back of your mind, you tried not to. But I really enjoyed Oklahoma. I really enjoyed living there. And I really enjoyed, I had a friend, actually a black kid, to be honest with you. I mean, not that means anything one way or the other, but he just was. He's a good friend of mine. His name was Adrian Lunsford, and we both love football and played backup football or our backyard football, every chance we got, and it was a good time. I mean, I enjoyed that part of my life, And then we moved to Texas, and that's when it started falling apart. No, I'm joking. But my dad gets orders. We go to Texas. And, this was after, like I said, I made a profession of faith in the church or whatever, and I really, truly believed that it was legitimate. But then when we moved to Texas, we started going to this church, and we had a really good experience at the one in Oklahoma with the Lawton Baptist Tabernacle at the Christian school. It was a good experience for me, personally. But then we started going to this church in Texas called Town East Baptist in San Antonio. And I guess my folks figured, we'd finished up some elementary school, I guess my folks figured that the best thing to do would be to put us in another private school. Well, not always. Another Christian school, right? This was an independent fundamental Baptist church. I don't know if anybody's ever is familiar with that. I want to call it a religion, not to offend people, but to me it was. As a matter of fact, looking back on it now and what I experienced at that time, I would even call it fascism. For my, because, and this is why I say that, they were so religious in this church that it made me and probably my brother too. Actually, I know it made my brother miserable. It traumatized him, actually, to be honest with you. It really traumatized him at 8 years old. But anyway, I remember having to go to this church and absolutely hating it. Hating every minute of it because, one, we were military kids. Everywhere we went, there were very few times where there were other military families within a church. If they were like Air Force, probably not Army or whatever. And so people cannot relate to us. And Town East was like way out in the sticks kind of thing. So all the kids were country. And my brother and I were more city. We were suburban folk, So we had nothing in common with these other kids. And they had nothing in common with us. And the drive to church took forever. I was like, man, Dad, can't you find someplace closer for us to go worship the Lord? I mean, it took forever, man. And, I would just sit back there and play my electronic football game, because it seemed like the drive would take forever to get there. And then to get back. And my parents were heavily involved in the church. Heavily involved. I guess they felt it was the right thing to do. And this was church, and this was worshiping the Lord, and this was relationship. Even though it wasn't, but we didn't know any better back then. This is like 1981 now, what have you, We didn't know any better. And so when they decided to send us to the Christian school, man, it was horrible. Picture this, okay? Picture this. You're going to this Christian school at this church, and the uniform, the school colors are green and white. And it's pretty cool, actually. If you, the actual, sports shirts that we would wear for athletics, for either PE or to actually compete with other schools or whatever, They weren't bad. Green and white with an eagle. We were the Town East Baptist Eagles, and nice. How you get that into a school uniform that makes you look like a Thanksgiving pilgrim every day is beyond me. This was the school uniform. A short-sleeved yellow, grossly yellow, just like nasty yellow, not bright yellow, but just kind of like really dingy type yellow. Okay, short sleeve shirt, long sleeve I guess in the winter, but it didn't get that cold in San Antonio. But anyway, short sleeve shirt, brown like Dickies or Hagar or whatever, jean type pants, okay, just ugly brown pants, and a brown clip-on tie. And for the girls, it was the same thing, except it was a nasty yellow blouse and a brown skirt, right? Or culottes, I think they called them then, or whatever. Anyway, just nasty. This was our school uniform. So they choose brown and yellow, making us look like pilgrims every day or some kind of religious cult with a brown clip-on tie for our school uniform, even though our school colors are green and white, right? But this is the best part, okay? Lord forbid anybody saw a guy's legs, even though we're like 11 to 17 years old, I guess, because it was a Christian school for all age groups, like K through 12 or whatever, okay? So even to play basketball, we wore baseball pants, okay? Even to play soccer, we wore baseball pants because nobody could see your legs, all right? Now, at the time, I thought it was stupid. I thought it was annoying. I'm 11 years old. I thought it was just dumb. Looking at it now, though, it's like, this is fascism, man. Okay? Because they wanted to keep everybody so pure, but it didn't work. We had a girl that actually got pregnant, and she was treated like, what's the woman's name from the Scarlet Letter? Hester? Something like that, I think her name was. Anyway, if you remember, I think it was the book by Hawthorne, a movie later, whatever, Scarlet Letter. That's pretty much how they treated her. Instead of giving her support and helping this teenage girl, they treat her like a leper. She had to get up in front of the entire congregation, admit her sin, admit that she, has an unwanted pregnancy, that she fornicated. Embarrassing, humiliating, horrible experience. Probably traumatized this girl for life, maybe. Her name is Nancy Burris. I remember, like I said, I remember names. How? I don't know. I just do. And things impact me in my life. I remember them. And anyway, that's how they treated people. We would go to summer camp, and that was miserable. That was horrible. But what I really hated more than anything was being part of the school. Because at the exact same place that we would have to go to church Sunday night, and Wednesday night, because my parents were also in the choir, so they would have choir practice. We'd get there really early Sunday night, so they would have choir practice. I'll get into that in a minute. Wednesday night, we did not miss. Sunday mornings, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Just like clockwork. We did not miss, man. And then every single flipping day, we went to the exact same location. It was a building outside the main sanctuary to go to school. But it's got worse than that. My mom was actually a teacher assistant at the school. And we had these like little cubicle areas that we would work in. And there was a program called ACE at the time where you would work at your own level and own pace. So you were basically your own teacher. Nobody instructed you. The teacher's assistants or whatever would be there if you had any problems or questions or whatever. And then they would, you raise your hand, they would come over and try to help you. But they weren't even qualified for the most part. They were paid volunteers, if there's such a thing. Because they were not teachers. They were not educators. They were adults that made it through high school, but probably a lot of them, some of them anyway, didn't have any formal education past that point in time. So they're trying to rack their brain and remember what it was like to be in school before and to remember these things, remember those things. And I'm like breezing through stuff because I'm my own teacher. Not learning a darn thing, but I'm just breezing through these booklets, right? And I'm like a sixth grader doing eighth grade math, and I suck at math. So there, right there, that is a big problem. I'm not learning a darn thing, okay? But if you just learn enough to do well enough to pass the test, they move you on to the next level. So I'm like doing eighth grade math in sixth grade. I'm doing like 11th grade history in sixth grade because I'm just breezing through them, right? Well, after a while, I start rebelling. I'm an 11-year-old kid. I'm sick of church. I'm sick of God. I'm sick of the pastor. I'm sick of everybody. I'm sick of the youth group or the pre-youth group or whatever else. My brother and I aren't liked. I hate the uniform. I hate it all. So I start rebelling, right? So I'm like, forget this. I'm not doing this garbage anymore. So nobody was ever checking my work, really. Okay? You're just breezing through, all right? There's no accountability here, right? Well, eventually, your sins always do catch up with you, So I just stopped working. I don't remember what I was doing to fill my time, but nobody was monitoring anything. I wasn't learning anything, and I didn't care. So I just stopped working, and then somehow it caught up with me. I think it was like the end of semester or something, just before Christmas break, okay? And I guess they gathered all the booklets, and they were going to grade them all or whatever. And I hadn't worked for a long time. And my mom was humiliated because she was a teacher's assistant and her son was in the class. And I think my brother was there too, but I just remember me for this. But anyway, and she was really humiliated. And so what do? When a Christian school environment like that, you take the kid to the principal's office. And I remember the principal sitting me down and talking to me, offering me a velament. Remember those? And then he whooped my butt. And he whooped it hard. One of the worst spankings I ever got in my life, man. I think it was one of those paddles with the holes in them, So he whooped me hard, man. And I spent that whole Christmas break catching up on all the work I wasn't doing. And hating life. Hating myself, hating life, hating God, hating my folks, hating the church, hating everything. Because it was miserable. It sucked. To me, it was fascism. I hated it. Hated the uniform, hated the church, hated it all. So, finally, we get to leave Texas. And my dad gets orders to Minnesota. And my brother what the heck, Minnesota, man? Why are we going to Minnesota? Well, my dad gets stationed at a military interest processing station. All right? A MEPS, they call it. And he goes, and so we have to drive all the way from San Antonio, from Texas, all the way up to Minnesota. And you talk about culture shock, man. Because we got there around March of 85, I think it was. So I'm not quite 15. No, what am I saying? No, I'm thinking too far ahead. No, we got March 81, excuse me, something like that. 81, 82, something like that. So I think I'm still 11. And yeah, because I'm just finishing up my sixth grade year. Fortunately, I did not have to go to this horrible school at Town East for very long, just long enough to get traumatized. Because if anybody remembers any of my past videos, I don't know if I talked about this channel or not. I probably have, but I know I did on Fear No Man a long time ago. I literally jumped out the window at that school in Town East Christian School in San Antonio, because on Sunday nights, if you're not familiar with this, I'll tell you, on Sunday nights, when my folks are down having choir practice, this is before we got to Minnesota, we're still back in San Antonio, I got ahead of myself a little bit, but on Sunday night, they would take us to the same area on Sunday nights that we were already at for school, maybe just a different room, the entire flipping week, Monday through Friday. I mean, you can't escape this place. It was like a prison, okay? So we're like there. It's Sunday night, we're up there, and this guy by the name, we called him Brother Gott. And I remember his son, Michael, we were friends, Well, for whatever reason, these geniuses thought that it was a really, really good idea because everybody thought the rapture was coming at any minute. Okay? I'm just gonna, if you listen to me for any length of time, you're going to understand why I think the way I think, and why I believe the way I believe, and why I feel the way I feel, if it matters at all. Okay? The rapture's coming at any time. Matter of fact, I've been told that the rapture's coming since 1988. But even then, before then, okay, they wanted to scare the hell out of us. Okay, I'm just going to be honest here, by bringing these children upstairs. My brother's 8 at the time, and teaching us about Revelation. Because you're never too young to learn about Revelation, right? So they teach us Revelation, and they give us like this comic book aspect of it. But I mean, it's got all the gory details, man. It's got the guillotines, it's got the blood, it's got the gore, it's got the fear, it's got everything. It's got the thief in the night, the Mark 6 production kind of things. If people remember that kind of stuff, if you grew up in the church or you're familiar with that, it's got the, man, you better get saved or you're going to hell, like right now kind of thing. But don't worry, we won't endure any of this. I'm like, what the heck are you teaching us this for? We're not going to be here for any of it. Then why do I need to know about it? It sucks to be the people that are left behind, but if we're not going to be here, I mean, it's like, I could, you can spare me the horror story, right? But no. For whatever reason, I guess they felt that they still need to teach us this because it's interesting, I guess, and because just in case you do get left behind or whatever else, what you're going to have to endure, what you're going to have to deal with, and maybe somewhere in the back of their pea brain, back in their mind, it's like, what if we are here? What if we do have to endure this? What if we are going to have to face the guillotine? What if we are going to have to face persecution? What if we are going to have to face torture? What if we are going to have to be martyrs for the cause? What if, right? So anyway, as a reward, for lack of a better term, of getting through the Revelation series, and I don't think they taught us the whole book. Maybe they did. I don't know. I just remember it just traumatized my brother. It traumatized my brother, my younger brother, to the point where he hated church for so long, he never went again until he was, I don't know how many years. I don't know. I lost contact with him. I lost track. I don't know. I just know it traumatized him. So when he got out of school, he was just like, I'm done with this. I'm not saying he didn't have a relationship with God or whatever, but as far as church goes, any kind of gathering or whatever, he might have done some things here and there. I remember going to like this place called Alamo City Baptist Church, which is like another mega church in San Antonio, kind of like John Hagee's Cornerstone Church, if people are familiar with that. But anyway, I think he may have even visited there, but as far as having a real close relationship, probably not till much, much later in life, So anyway, it traumatized the poor kid, right? So that's what they did to us, okay? And as a reward for getting through all of this training, they give you like this comic book, 666 comic book, the Mark of the Beast kind of thing. It's like, oh gee, thanks, man. Can I burn it? See, but we were kind of brainwashed to the point to believe that this is what church was. Sitting through a very boring sermon, by Pastor Joe West, Brother West there, and just instructing the kids, if you were old enough to sit in the sanctuary, somebody put some glue on this young man's butt, somebody take care of him right there. This kid's acting up, and that kid's acting up from the pulpit and whatnot. And then toward the end, you'd have what they would call the altar call. People are familiar with that, where they would sing Just As I Am about 1,000 times, or I Surrender All or whatever, because, somebody out there still needs to get saved. So we're going to keep this altar call open for however long until the Cowboys start, because, Cowboys football, okay? Can't miss the Cowboys. But, I mean, we're going to keep this thing going until somebody out there still needs to get saved kind of thing. It's just like, oh my gosh, how many verses of Just As I Am can you sing? You know the one, just as I am without one plea. Please shoot me in the head and get rid of me. No, I'm joking. But anyway, I mean, it's just like, you can't deal with it anymore. It's like, oh, let me out of here, right? So finally we get to escape, and we get up to Minnesota. Oh, and Minnesota. Those were the good times, because we didn't care that it was cold. We didn't care that it was, different. We didn't care. We didn't care. We didn't care that my brother and I had to fight for our life pretty much every single day, to be accepted into the neighborhood. We were just glad to get out of that environment. And of course, we go to another Baptist church, but it wasn't nearly as bad. Not independent fundamental Baptist. It was a little more laid back. Up there in the Minnesota country. All the Scandinavians, Norwegians, and whatnot. So it was a little more laid back. Very competitive environment, though. I mean, very competitive. And then we, as far as like any kind of athletics, like church softball team, volleyball team, stuff like that. Very, very competitive. But by that time, I was old enough to kind of participate in these things, so it was cool with me, And we liked the school. But then my parents wanted to send my brother and I to another Christian school. We were like, ain't gonna happen this time. So my brother and I literally made ourselves look like the dumbest kids on the planet. And we totally bombed the test, the entrance exam. Because we weren't that smart anyway, but I made myself look like Forrest Gump, man. I mean, I was just like, he made himself look like Harry and Lloyd from Dumber and Dumber. I mean, my parents were humiliated. We know you're smarter than this. We know that you can do better than this. And they were like, you take this on purpose. And my brother like, yep, because we're not going to another Christian school. It ain't happening, Jack. So we rebelled. We flunked out, and my parents they accepted it whether they wanted to or not. So we kept going to the public school, which was fine with us. Yeah, did we get in fights all the time, get beat up all the time, do some beating up? Yeah, absolutely. That was part of growing up in the '80s. That was part of being in an environment, a public school environment, But that was a whole lot better than going to some other fascist Christian school, right? I wasn't even going to give it a chance. Plus, that it was a long way away again. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. I'm thinking of my folks, do you guys ever learn? And I'll get to that in a minute. Not trying to be insulting to my folks, but you got to remember, my folks were still very young parents. I'm 55 and my folks are 75, okay? So you do the math, all right? So anyway, so we're in Minnesota up to a point, the time where about 15. And we're just having a great time, man, playing ice hockey and street hockey and just hanging out with a bunch of heathens and, going to church all the time. But it really didn't mean anything. As a matter of fact, the pastor was an embezzler, As a matter of fact, he robbed us blind. My dad, who was a treasurer at the church, he figured it out because he's a very smart man, very good at math. And with the other guys, like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Pastor's robbing us, dude. Sure enough, he was. He was an embezzler. This was my first experience dealing with any kind of scumbag behind the pulpit. Boyce Brannon was his name. I think he's dead. Anyway, he robbed us blind. So they basically, instead of bringing him up on charges, they said, get out of the church. Get out of town. Get out of the church. We don't have anything to do with you. We're not going to... Probably should have charged him, to be honest with you, because he pulled the same scam other places before and after that, I think. But anyway, they decided to do the Christian thing and to, just kick him out of the church. So anyway, I remember that because this guy would come to our house and he watched football with us, Steelers and Cowboys. I was a big Steelers fan, still am, and everybody loved the Cowboys, anybody from Texas. And Boyce Brannon was from Texas, and he gets up to Minnesota. And he winds up embezzling the church here. But anyway, yeah, he's a nice guy. Come over to the house, come to the apartment. I think we live in an apartment. And he'd watch football and, kind of take my brother and I under his wing. And, we love Pastor Brandon. He's a great guy, The kind of guy that, put his arm around you while stabbing you at the back at the same time. That's what he was doing, stealing from the church. Imagine that. Hirelings, charlatans, Imagine that, right? So anyway, Pastor Brandon there, he goes back down to Texas. We find out later on down the road, and how we find this out is because my dad looks him up. Because he never knew that my dad was the guy that really caught him. My dad and the other people in the treasury, the deacons and whatnot of the church. He just figured the jig was up, I guess. He got caught somehow. So it's very interesting because when we go back down from Minnesota. My dad gets orders again to San Antonio. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There are no other places that the Army can send you. I mean, I don't really want to go overseas at my age now, because I'm like, 15 at the time? And I was just like, but are you kidding me? Back to San Antonio again? Like, what is the Army? I almost used the R word, sorry. Don't offend anybody. But are they that stupid? I mean, there's no other post anywhere in the United States but San Antonio. But because my dad was a lab tech instructor, and that's where the Academy of Health Sciences is in San Antonio, well, that's where he gets orders, right? So I'm like, he wanted to be a lab tech instructor, so that's where they sent him. So I'm like, okay, back to San Antonio. Here we go. So you're not gonna believe this though. After these horrible experiences, the last horrible experiences, apparently it wasn't so bad for my folks, but for my brother and I, of course, we get no say. I'm 15, my brother's 12. Who cares what we think or what we say, right? We go right back to the exact same church. At least not the school. Thank God for that. At least not the school. But the exact, and I'm just like, I'm looking at my folks like, you guys gotta be the dumbest people on the planet. Are you kidding me? You're gonna take us right back to the exact same church? Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Why? Creatures of habit. They didn't know where else to go. They didn't know what else to do. People remembered them. They remembered the people. But this time things were different. Everything that was hidden before has now come out into the open. Now, people cheating on each other, sleeping with each other's wives, husbands, whatever else, getting pregnant by other men. I mean, it's a disaster. It is an absolute mess. My brother and I are like looking at my folks like, yeah, I could have called this one. Told you so, kind of thing. And it's just like, this place sucks. Why did you bring us back here again? Come on, man, seriously. But we did, and we went back there until I could make my own decisions and decide not to go back there again, which wasn't until, of course, I was 18, But anyway, man, at that time, finished up at a 5A school, huge school in Texas, my 5th grade year. Really sucks though, being in a military family. I mean, there's some cool things. You get to meet different people, learn about different cultures, see different areas, learn about different things. What really sucks though is you get done doing term papers, research papers. Remember those things? I would get done doing one in some state, whatever, and I would just get done doing all this research and footnotes and not flashcards, 4x4, 4x6 cards or 3x5 cards with, the outline. Remember all that crap, footnotes and bibliography? Way back before the internet, you had to go to the library and research encyclopedias and books and check out so many books. You had to have so many sources. It would take forever, man. It's like they were training you to be a journalist or something at the time. It would take I go right back to Texas, and guess what they're about ready to start? A research paper, a term paper. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Can I just go back up to Minnesota, get the one, and bring it back here? Can I have somebody mail that to me? Will that work? No. No sympathy, no mercy, no compassion. You just do what you got to do. You're in the 80s, man. You're a kid in the 80s. You just suck it up. You just deal with it. No whining, no complaining. Nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to care anyway. So you just got to do what you got to do. That's the way it was in the 80s. Anybody in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. 70s, 80s, even in the 90s. We didn't get completely, I'll just say it this time. Sorry if people are offended, but retarded in such a social way until around 2015, in my opinion. That's when everything just went to hell with what do you call it, gay marriage and all that garbage, legalization of that. We got real dumb after that. That's when our morals just went into the toilet. I mean, yeah, it was bad in the 90s with the Clinton years and everything. That's probably when it all started. But it really got ridiculously dumb after 2015, I think. But anyway, I digress. But back to Texas, back to San Antonio. Oh man, finally get through high school. don't have to go to this stupid church anymore. Everything was different then. Like I said, I don't even think we stayed there that long this time around. But before we got back to that church, though, when we drove back from Minnesota to Texas, my dad actually looked up good old Pastor Boyce Brannon. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? I asked him about it later. I said, Dad, why'd you do that? And actually the guy came to our hotel room and visited us before we could get to where we needed to go to, because we had to go through, he was from Denton, Texas, home of the Von Erichs, you know, the wrestling family, the Von Erichs. And we had to go through that area to get down to San Antonio. And he actually came to our hotel room and visited us or whatever. And I asked my dad after his visit was done, and we all pretended like we were dumb. As a matter of fact, at that time, I was dumb. I don't think I knew that he was an embezzler at that time. I don't think my dad told my brother and I that until after that visit. But anyway, my dad told me, I just wanted to see if he was the same man that he was, you know, up in Minnesota. And I said, is he? He goes, oh, yeah. So I was just like, okay, fair enough. You know, leopard doesn't change its spots. Tiger doesn't change its stripes. You know, I get it. So anyway, so we're back down in San Antonio, and I'm finishing my high school career there, and Robert G. Cole Senior High School, and then that's pretty much the story. That's pretty much the gist of everything. But I didn't tell you why I jumped out the window, though. I just remember in San Antonio the first time around when I was like 11 years old. I'll tell you, because this is what happened. After one of those marathon sessions of learning about 666 and the mark of the beast or whatever, this was one of the most horrifying experiences I had in my life before Desert Storm. And people are probably familiar with that. If not, go to Benjamin Faircloth YouTube channel, or don't even go to the YouTube. Just type in Benjamin Faircloth, Ken Roberts. It'll come right up, and you can hear my interview that I gave with Pastor Ben 8 years ago, whatever it's been now, about my experiences in Desert Storm that most people wouldn't experience. Like I said, my life has been pretty interesting in certain ways. Maybe not as interesting as some people's, but more interesting than others. And that was that experience, so if people want to know the story there, most of it. I've shared it many, many times since then, but that's the one interview that's still up that I'm aware of, where I actually, you know, share all of my military experiences in that interview, as well as, you know, things I've said before. People are familiar with them. If not, I don't know what to tell you. They were probably all on the Fear No Man channel, and that's gone. So, but anyway, this is why I jumped out the window. We were done with the with one of these sessions, and I'm 11 years old. I go to the bathroom. I think I let people know, maybe I didn't or whatever. And I guess I was in there too long, or they were in a hurry, because I think we went a little long, and we had to get downstairs for that Sunday night service, you know. So I'm just being honest here, okay? Get downstairs for that Sunday night service. Don't want to be late, you know. So I come out of the bathroom, and it is pitch black in this place. Pitch black. And I'm kind of familiar with the area because, you know, I go to school there every day. But for the life of me, I couldn't find a light switch if my life depended on it, man. And I am feeling all around the walls. I can't even see. It is dark up there, okay? You turn on all the lights in there, close all the doors, you can't see nothing. And I'm looking and looking and looking. I can't find anything. And I said, I'm 11 years old, okay? Not real, not real old or real young either. I mean, I'm 11 years old. I mean, you can judge whether I should have done something different or not. That's on you, okay? That's whatever. Just keep in mind I'm 11, okay? I'm 11. I'm very shy, very timid. Don't have a lot of self-confidence. Basically just doing what I'm told to do as a kid in the 80s, all right? I mean, and traumatized by church, all right? So I'm 11 years old, and I'm feeling all on the walls for a light switch anywhere, and I can't find anything. And I start getting scared because we just learned about 666, the mark of the beast, the devil, Christian persecution, you know, the horses riding, the horses, the apocalypse, and everything else. I'm scared, man. I'm thinking the devil's after me. I'm going to die. You know, devil's after me. You know, I don't know what to do. I'm yelling. Nobody's coming. You know, I don't know what to do. So, for whatever reason, I guess because of training, you know, like with a fire, stop, drop, and roll kind of thing, whatever reason, I just felt more comfortable getting closer to the ground. I don't know why. So I started crawling along the floor. And I guess maybe I was like, well, he can't see me if I'm low to the ground. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, I'm crawling along the floor. And I crawl down this long, long corridor, this long hallway. And I see a little light underneath one of the doors. And I'm like, oh, okay, because it's still light out. It's just really, really dark in that hallway. And so I look underneath the door and I see some light that's shining underneath the door. And so I'm able to find, so because of that light, I'm able to find that door and open that door. And I'm just like, oh, finally some light. Now, if I would have been thinking more clearly, I would have done this. But I wasn't thinking clearly. And at the time, I'm thinking I'm going to get in trouble. And I got to solve this problem on my own. So if I would have thought more clearly, I would have just kept that door open, got the light to shine into the hallway, which would have probably allowed me to see all the way to the end, to the emergency exit. Now, I would have set the fire alarm off. But see, I was so scared that if I would have set the fire alarm off, people would have come or whatever. That would have interrupted the Sunday night service. That's an unforgivable sin, man. So I'm just being honest with you, okay? I mean, fear ruled my life, okay? Fear really ruled my life. So I was just like, so if I do that, I'm going to set the fire alarm off. That's an emergency exit. So I can't do that. I'm going to get in trouble. So the only other choices I have is to sit up here and wait until finally somebody figures out that I'm up here after they search for me eventually, And my folks are concerned because the service started and I'm not there. And they asked my brother, where's your brother? And he's like, I don't know, because like I said, I guess I didn't let anybody know I was going to the bathroom. I just figured, I would just go real quick and come out. Now, I didn't think everybody would be gone by that time, but they were. So I go into this room where there's at least some light, and I'm thinking I could sit here and wait forever, but I'm bored. Man, there's no internet at the time. I don't have any cell phone. I don't have my electronic game with me or whatever, I'm definitely not going to read any books. I'm traumatized. I'm scared. I'm just like, so I go over to the window, and we're in the second story. I go over to the window, and I can prop it open because there's no locks on it. I can push it open. I push it open, I pull it up, I look out, and I'm like, you know what, that is pretty far down. But if I hang and drop, I might be okay. I won't die. Maybe I break my ankle, sprain my ankle or whatever, but that's a lot better than getting trapped up here for I don't know how long. And I'm just thinking of escaping, just thinking of getting out. So that's what I do. Climb out the window, I hang from the ledge, and I drop. And I believe in my heart that an angel cushioned my fall. Because this is not soft ground that I'm dropping on. And I'm wearing tennis shoes or maybe even dress shoes if I'm at church, So I believe an angel cushioned my fall. I really do. I believe the Lord cushioned my fall. Because this was not soft grass ground. This was hard ground. It was like hard, not concrete, but it was hard dirt, hard sand. Not really sand. It was just hard dirt, hard ground. And I didn't injure myself at all. I was upset. I was crying. I was scared. So I wound up just disrupting the service anyway. Because by that time, I'm like traumatized. I was like, so I go in looking for my folks, and then they weren't upset. They weren't angry. Thought it was crazy probably, but they weren't angry or upset. But that's how I escaped that situation. And some people say, well, that was really brave. Some people say it was really stupid. All I know is I got out, and I wouldn't have done the same thing twice most likely. But at that time, at 11 years old, I was also kind of adventurous, shy and timid, but also adventurous. And I was just thinking, worst case scenario, I break my ankle, I sprain my ankle, but at least I'm out of here. So that's what I did. And that was kind of like the lasting mark. My first experience with complete and total darkness that I didn't know how to control or what to do in the situation. And then the second one was, of course, in Desert Storm. Like I said, if people aren't familiar with that, Benjamin Faircloth, Ken Roberts, just type it all in right next to each other. The interview will come up, and you can listen to my experience there. So, anyway, this is getting pretty long, close to an hour. I don't want to really go over an hour because a lot of people probably tuned out by now anyway. But let me tell you why I'm telling you guys all this stuff, okay? And listen to Pastor Hank's annihilation. Man, why can I not say that? Annihilationism. Annihilationism, okay, teaching. And it made me think of some things. I listened to Rosie Lost Sheep message before that. It made me think about some things, you know. September is going to be upon us very quickly. And everything that I'm seeing and hearing about, the reports that are coming out. I just told you all, I grew up in a Baptist church pretty much my whole life. I didn't know anything about prophecy. They didn't teach us anything about prophecy. They didn't teach us anything about the Holy Spirit other than the fact that that's what God used to convict you of your sins so you would get saved. I didn't know anything at all about anything else. Started going to Assemblies of God when I was a little older. Started to learn about some things then. But even then, it was more like the power of the Holy Spirit was to make you feel good, more charismatic, you know, raising your hands in church and singing songs and feeling good about yourself and everything, you know. And, you know, but, I mean, not to be facetious there, I mean, because there is, you know, there's a lot of power in that, you know, speaking in tongues and so forth. You know, people believe that, you know, I mean, the baptism of the Holy Spirit, if people believe that. But anyway, there's a lot of good things to that, you know, where you receive gifts from the Spirit and things of that nature. So I said, I'm not mocking, I'm not being facetious there. What I'm saying is it's totally different than the Baptist way of thinking, the Baptist religion, Baptist beliefs. And so it wasn't until many years later, to around 2015, to where, it was actually June of 2015, to where I began to research and investigate and study more about prophecy and what all this means. And one of the first things I came across is Dimitri Duduman. And I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know a whole lot about prophecy. I didn't know a whole lot about anything. But what really intrigued me was his message about the internal revolution. And, you know, the countries that are going to come against the United States, and we're not as strong as we think we are, and our military is not as powerful as we think it is. We're not in the 80s anymore. We don't have Reagan, okay? The world doesn't respect us the way it used to. It doesn't fear us the way it used to. And I'm seeing all these headlines, I'm seeing all these reports. You tell me, when was the last time a dictator just gave up easily, even to the United States? Maybe during the Reagan years. Since that time, not so much. You go back to Mogadishu, you know, Somalia, you know, Black Hawk Down and stuff. They didn't give up, okay? We lost Rangers, we lost Special Forces. You know, if you ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down, it's not exactly a successful mission, okay? Warlords do not back down. Dictators do not back down to our military any longer, to our country any longer. They're not afraid. They're not scared. Maduro's not scared. He's not scared of the 4,000 Marines. He's not scared, okay? They are preparing for war. And when Dimitri Duduman gave that message, you know, for however many years ago it was, you know, and he talked about the different countries. He said there was two he couldn't remember. Well, I think one's Venezuela. I wasn't sure for a while, but I think one's Venezuela. Because it appears that we are on the verge of an internal revolution that will open the door for our nation to be attacked in this way. And I believe that the people are going to start fighting against the government even more with protests and riots. And eventually it's going to get violent. Eventually it's going to get bloody. Because they're not going to continue to take this. If you see what people are saying in D.C., the residents and so forth, they're not backing down. They're not scared. They're not afraid. They're going to fight. People are going to continue to fight. Now, whether they win or not is irrelevant. They want to fight. They do not want to back down. So the prophecy is people will begin to fight against the government. Then we will be attacked. Doesn't say how much longer after that, but I can see the writing on the wall. I can see where it's all being set up now. I can see where the internal revolution may be beginning, and I think it's going to happen in September. That's my heart. That's what I believe, which is a few days away now, the beginning of it. So I believe that's going to happen. And I believe that when it does, it's going to catch a lot of people off guard because they don't know prophecy. They don't understand prophecy. They don't believe prophecy. So they don't think there's going to be an internal revolution. and they think our military is stronger than what we think it is. And I remember Benjamin Faircloth again saying, before when he was preaching, he said, you know what, God will not go with us in our next war. He is not on military side anymore. He is not on the U.S.'s side anymore. He is not going to be on our side, militarily speaking, any longer. So I expect us to lose and lose big. Maybe not right away. Might win a few battles here and there. Might win a few skirmishes. But ultimately we're going to lose and lose big. Especially when you have all of these nations conspiring and coming together against us. We don't have a chance because God won't be on our side. We've abandoned God, so He's abandoned us. That's the way I see this thing. That's what I believe is going to happen. And I believe it's going to start in September. People can agree, disagree. You can think I'm crazy. You can think I'm a false prophet, even though I'm not prophesying anything. I am just giving you my opinion on it. From a person, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I grew up in a military family from the time I was 5 years old. I served for a total of 12 years between active and reserve. I was deployed into war. I helped other units with deployment. I served with the Marines. I'm not just giving everybody my resume here, but I've been in the stuff, okay? They say another word, but I'll just say it like that. The blood, the guts, the mud. Seen a lot, done a lot. Dealt with death, dealt with injuries, dealt with a lot of stuff. Lots of stuff. I said, this thing's almost an hour. I mean, I could bore people to tears with the other experiences that I've had, helping to save lives and to help people who have been injured and things of that nature. I mean, I've done some stuff. I've seen some stuff. I've experienced some stuff. At 55, I hope you all have too, if you're my age or older, or maybe even younger. This is what I believe. This is what I'm preparing for. This is what I'm preparing my heart for. I'm not preparing my heart to be raptured. I'm not preparing my heart to escape. I suggest people watch the Rosie Lost Sheep video. Whether you believe her or you don't believe her, the bottom line is it's a very convincing message. And it basically says you're not getting out of here. You're just not. It's not happening. It's not happening in September 2025. Let's put it that way. Okay? So, you can keep listening to whatever you want to listen to, believe whoever you want to believe. People can do that. That's their choice. That's their option. But the bottom line is you better have a plan in case you're here after September 2025. Okay? So all these people selling this, giving away that, they're going to regret it. Okay? All these people, hey, like I said before, I admire them that they're putting their money where their mouth is. Okay? I admire that, but it's still foolish. They're going to regret it. You're going to be here. You're going to have to endure. You're going to have to deal with this stuff. We're going to have to deal with the internal revolution. We might have to deal with some attacks. We might have to deal with a lot of things that people are not expecting to happen. Maybe even in this upcoming month. But I believe it's going to really start in this upcoming month. And so I hope and pray that people get ready for this. They get their hearts right. They get prepared. Fast, pray, whatever you have to do. Stop hanging out with idiots. Stop hanging out with people who don't know what they're talking about. Stop listening to fools. Okay? I'm just going to say it. Okay? You want to listen to this Joshua clown from South Africa or whatever? You go right ahead. You want to listen to these false prophets, false teachers? You want to listen to these people that make you feel good, that just, are just going to lie to you while stabbing you in the back and stealing your money? You go right ahead. I call that being a fool. All right? But you want to do that, you go right ahead and do that. All right? The reason I'm doing this is because I don't like to see people deceived. I hate it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Whether I know you or don't know you, I don't want to see you deceived. I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want to see you left out in the cold. I don't want to see you, scratching your head, wondering what's going on. Especially if you're a dad or a husband or what have you. You have to lead your family. You have to protect your family. You have to provide for your family. You have to do what you got to do for your family. You can't be wasting time getting fooled by a bunch of charlatans and hirelings and witches and warlocks and deceivers. There's no time for that stuff. I'm trying to speak to you man to man, husband to husband, dad to dad, whatever it is, to help people to understand that you cannot be deceived by this stuff. Okay? It's time to really understand the times that we're living in and that you're not getting out of here, so you better have a plan. And you better have not a plan to escape. You better have a plan to endure. You better get around the right people. You better start serving with the right people. You better start, listening to the right people. Or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. very shortly. And I don't want to see that. And I don't want to hear about it. And I hope people take this to heart. And thank you for listening. Thank you, if you did, for paying attention. And I hope you got something out of it. Hope it was maybe a little entertaining, a little fun, a little different. But I just wanted to share all these things that are on my heart, for lack of a better term, kind of like a podcast. Like I said, people listen to it in the background while you're doing stuff, or listen to it in the car or whatever. Hopefully it was a little, like I said, different, entertaining, fun, but also serious too. All right, I got to get going. Y'all have a very good and blessed day. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.